suppress your just claim, nor stain with dishonor America's name. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our courage.
How did General Cornwallis lose the Southern campaign in the Revolutionary War? The purpose of this video is to briefly examine his history, to examine his tactics, and analyze two battles that were essential and that helped bring about his defeat. We will go on location to the battlefield of 96 and also to the Cowpens battlefield. Travel with me as we go and explore what caused Cornwallis's defeat. Cornwallis began his military career in 1757, and he studied military tactics. He studied at the military academy at Turin. He fought in the 7 Years' War, where he was quickly promoted due to his wins and his valiant military tactics. It is interesting that Cornwallis was actually a sympathizer with the American colonists. As a member of Parliament, he voted against the 1765 Stamp Act. His statements and his actions appeared to show him as a supporter of the colonists leading up to the American Revolution. Once the American Revolution began, Cornwallis was a faithful soldier to England, and he served in military leadership under General Sir Henry Clinton and General William Howe's campaign. General Charles Cornwallis was built for war. He possessed brilliant tactical skills, and his experience on the battlefield was tremendous. If Cornwallis was such an incredible leader, then how did he lose the campaign in the southern colonies? Cornwallis was defeated due to a combination of issues, such as his strategies of war, by the directives of his superiors, his belief in loyalist supports in the South, a substantial loss of troops, a devastating loss of several battles, and the loss of supplies. Some of these issues plagued him throughout the campaign. Some were unexpected, and other issues surprised him. Charles Heaton wrote an article in 2010 titled "The Failure of Enlightenment Military Doctrine in Revolutionary America: The Piedmont Campaign and the Fate of the British Army in the Lower South." According to Heaton, Cornwallis failed in the southern colonies due to poor strategy. Cornwallis and the other military leaders followed the Enlightenment military doctrine. This doctrine focused on professional soldiers, planned battles, and fortified areas to hold taken land. His thesis was to prove that Cornwallis' acceptance and passion for the Enlightenment doctrine was what caused his downfall. American General Nathanael Greene was adaptive to his surroundings. It allowed him to retake the southern colonies eventually. The troop level of Cornwallis was 2,750 troops, which is small, limiting but very maneuverable and strategic. Cornwallis also had no situational awareness. America was not well defined. It was not as mapped as Europe was. The lack of situational awareness caused great communication issues, reinforcement problems, and errors in battle planning. This lack of situational awareness was in stark contrast to Greene, who was obsessive about making sure he understood the field of battle and surrounding areas. There are three battles that were the turning point for the Revolutionary War that caused the defeat of General Cornwallis in the South. Today, we are here at the battlefield of 96. We will also talk about the Battle of Cowpens and the Battle of Yorktown. I want to walk through you today as we're here at the battlefield of 96, the map and what occurred on this battlefield. If you'll notice here, we have the stockade fort up here, comes down to the village of 96, to Star Fort. Each of these areas have trenches, these communication trenches, where loyalist soldiers can go between the three camps. Here we have Star Fort. As you clearly see, each of these areas is very well protected. In fact, General Nathaniel Greene said that this fort was so protected, it was very unlikely going to be taken. General Cornwallis said that this battlefield must be held, that it is central to winning the Southern campaign. Now, as General Nathaniel Greene comes up to fight, you'll notice that he builds these parallel trenches all the way up. And as he comes up here, he's going to shoot off cannons, gunfire, and troops are going to battle the Star Fort. We're going to move up into some other areas here at the battle, but I want you to see what these soldiers had experienced that day. Cornwallis gave his Lieutenant Colonel Kruger the responsibility of holding this fort. He actually said it was essential to winning the Southern campaign. And the way General Cornwallis did is when he came from Charleston, he would establish forts and military bases along the way to hold that territory. This is one of those forts. Behind me, you will see the fort, the grounds that are humped up. You've got to picture with me, they would have sandbags, wood covering the top of this to make this tower very tall. Now, as General Greene came in to defeat this absolutely essential fort, he built these trenches that you're seeing along the way. And the way he handled this is he would inch and inch and inch forward, getting closer and closer to this fort in order to defeat it. Now, once he arrived at this point, you see that he brought in the heavy artillery and they are bombarding this fort. But General Greene said this fort might not be defeated. It was so well fortified. If you look to my over here, you'll notice a rifle post. Now what this was widely used in the Battle of Camden. In the Battle of Camden, this sniper post using rifles shot down into the fort, and it was one of the reasons the Battle of Camden was won. So we have General Greene is going to use this tactic again to get a high elevation to shoot down into the enemy fort. The enemy fort realized that they were giving gunfire coming down, and so they began to build the sandbags higher and higher. They actually would take flaming cannonballs and would shoot these cannonballs into this to try to destroy it. Everything was unsuccessful. General Greene, you'll see these white strings over here, built a mine. And they dug this mine under the ground, hoping to get right up to the base of the fort to destroy the fort. It was also unsuccessful. General Greene made one last attempt, and they decided to assault this fort with a frontational assault. When they approached the thing, they lost. General Greene retreated in defeat. It wasn't but a few weeks later that Lieutenant Colonel left this fort. He felt it was too far away from Charleston, and so he burnt the fort and the areas surrounding to this and retreated down south to Charleston. So even though General Greene lost the battle, it helped him to win this territory and to win this fort. This battle was absolutely essential in how Greene won the Southern campaign. The Battle of Cowpens. On January 17, 1781, American General Daniel Greene overwhelmingly defeated a better trained army of General Tarleton. The battle was a turning point in the American Revolution. The battle marked the defeat of General Cornwallis in the South. General Cornwallis, because of this defeat, would limp up to Virginia and eventually be defeated at the Battle of Yorktown. The defeat here at Cowpens was a serious blow to Cornwallis. If he had won this battle, some scholars stipulate that he may have won the Southern campaign. The Americans in this battle had three types of troops. They had the militia, which was commanded by Andrew Pickens. They had the Continental Army, commanded by John Eager Howard, and a cavalry commanded by the second cousin of George Washington, whose name was William Washington. Now, General Morgan used the terrain here to his advantage. As you look at the battlefield here, what you will notice is to my right is the British Army. Now, General Tarleton, what he would do here is he had in the middle, he had his artillery. On each side was his infantry, and on the ends, he would have his cavalry. Now, the American general placed his militia right here where I am standing. They would be hiding behind trees, hiding behind any kind of field emplacements that they can. And they were aiming at the cavalry, and they would take out any troops that they could possibly aim. Now, the militia could not outmaneuver or outshoot the British troops, but their muskets could shoot further, and they were very highly trained marksmen. Now, behind me was the second line, which was the main militia. Behind them was the Continental Army, and behind them was the cavalry. Once the battle began, which lasted about an hour to an hour and a half, as the British general started his troops coming this way, you had the militias firing. When the militias took out many of the cavalry, they retreated as they were commanded to the second line. Once they got to the second line, Pickens' militia fired back. This is at this moment, as they were retreating back to the Continental Army, the cavalry charged. It was a bloody fight, but unknowing to the British Army, here comes the Washington cavalry. They come in fighting back and forth. Howard gave the command to turn to the right, facing the British cavalry so they could take them out. But because the battle was so loud, and you had bagpipes and drums and gunfire, they misheard the command, and instead of turning, they thought he said to retreat. So they very orderly began to retreat backward. General Morgan sprang into action, jumped on his horse, ran back to his army, and says, no, don't retreat, reform a line. As they're retreating, the British thought they won the day. And so they told their troops, charge. And so instead of a straight line, an orderly charge, the men charged. Meanwhile, he gets them, he says, turn, form a line, and fire. When he did, they obliterated the British Army. That moment was such well-timed that they were able to win the battle with that moment. This was an overwhelming victory for the Continental Army, and they devastated the British Army that day. This would go down as the turning point for the British Army losing the Southern Campaign.
We fall in so righteous a cause, let us hope to succeed. For heaven approves of each generous deed. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we'll live. Our purses are ready, steady, friends, steady. Not as slaves, but as free men, our money will give.